Hey everyone, welcome to this special episode of That's Church. I'm Emilie, and today my sister Ashlie and I are sitting down with Meagan Skidmore from Meagan Skidmore Coaching. We're diving into some deep and vulnerable conversations about our belief systems, the process of deconstruction and reconstruction, and how all of that led us to start this interfaith podcast. We're excited to share this journey with you. Before we get started, don't forget we have an interfaith event coming up on November 2nd at the Compass Gallery from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. You can grab your tickets at tinyurl.com/that'schurch. And make sure to use the code Meagan Skidmore Coaching for 50% off. Also, be sure to check out Meagan's amazing conversations on her podcast, Beyond the Shadow of Doubt, wherever you find your podcasts. All right, let's dive into part one.
Welcome to today's episode, whichever podcast you're listening on. This is Meagan Skidmore, and I'm so happy to be here with Ashlie or Ash. Sorry,
Ashlie, but either one is fine.
Okay, you have Ash on your window here,
Mm-hmm.
and Emilie. And I reached out to you all not too long ago. I don't know. Time hardly means anything anymore. and said, what if we did a podcast episode together? I've been podcasting for a little over 2 years now, and I noticed when y'all started popping up in my feed and with mutual friends, and I was like, yes, another person, another, podcast that's addressing these conversations that maybe in our communities that are closer to home don't necessarily happen. And so I've been thrilled to watch you all grow and put out episodes. So thanks for going along with this idea and sharing an episode together.
Yay. We are so
Thank
excited to be
you.
here. And we admire your podcast and your platform as well. Because, like you mentioned, I don't think there can be enough voices talking about these topics and issues. So we appreciate you.
I really love too, after we just went to Restore and Gather and met so many different people that are a part of this space, but everyone has their own little section of it, And I love seeing what people are building and kind of piecing it all together into something really beautiful that can stand on its own. And I think everyone is so individual. And so I think it's so great that we are all kind of giving, our piece of the pie and in what is important to us. And so I think what you're doing is so invaluable and so important for so many people that are really struggling with their faith transitions right now. So thank you so much for what you're doing. We are so excited to hear about it. So you've been doing podcasting for 2 years. We just started a year ago. It's a lot of work.
It is.
Isn't it?
It is so much work. Editing is no joke. So yeah, I get you. I feel you.
And you have like 100, I noticed you have like 178 episodes or something.
143 published.
Okay. Wow. And you're coaching also.
Yes.
So
I'm a life coach. So maybe we can share a little bit of our backgrounds of our, the origin of my podcast. My faith, I call it a pivot in my faith journey. That happened, I don't know, sometime in 2019 and 2020 when my kiddo, when we learned of my kiddo's identity as LGBTQ+. And it rocked my world. I talk about it in some other podcast episodes of mine. But it really created this cognitive dissonance in me that was overwhelming. And it was excruciating to have been raised with the tenets of the LDS faith and then have this reality, here in my own home with my own family. And the ramifications of what that meant were a lot of things at the time, scary, petrifying even. I didn't even know sometimes what to think or how to allow myself even to think and have the questions and the doubts that were just naturally coming up. And mixed in with all of this, I started coach certification. And so I remember it was sometime in 2021, I started to feel like a lot of coaches have a podcast, and I never, ever saw myself as a podcaster. But I kept feeling this prompting that you need to start one, and the name of it came to me, and I was like, really? You have to do that? You know,
I love
beyond
your
the
name, by the
beyond
way.
the
It's
shadow of a
awesome.
doubt is something we all heard growing up from the
Yeah.
pulpit or from teachers, and it's like I don't know, for lack of a better way, I bought into that. Like I was like, yeah, we need to know these things with this absolute certainty. But I realized what was going on for me in this process of my trying to reconcile, my faith and my family and our reality. I wasn't allowing the questions and the doubts because of what I was making it mean about me, because of the shame that was coming up, because it would mean I was apostate, because it would mean I was a heretic, because it would mean I wasn't a good parent, or a true believer. Wow, I haven't thought about all that in a while, but I knew what I knew about me and about my heart and about my relationship with the divine, which that connection was one of the things that stayed, that was constant. I'm not saying there weren't times that I wasn't frustrated or even angry at God. I'd be lying, but I still knew that connection was there. So when I finally just said, okay, I'm going to start this in 2022, I released my first episodes, and wasn't originally going to have guests, but that was another thing that came along later. And I'm glad that I did, because it's actually been something that's been very therapeutic for me to have these conversations, conversations that most aren't, for whatever reason, able to have right now in their journey. So yeah, that's kind of the start for me. And I purposely dropped the A from beyond the shadow of a doubt in an effort to try to shine light on this concept and how we conceptualize doubt, that it's not a negative thing. It's a good thing. It's part of a faith journey. It's healthy. It's healthy to have them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We always say that our guests heal us. 100%. We kind of started doing this for ourselves, and we're so happy that other people are coming along for the ride and learning with us and healing with us also, because I think it's such a journey of healing and just a spiritual journey in general as well. And I'd love to get into our origin story, but I want to ask you, you mentioned shame, and I think that's something that you focus on in your coaching. And I think that's really valuable, because I think there's so much shame that people are feeling, and it's so unnecessary. So can you tell us a little bit about how you approach shame with your clients, patients? How do you approach that with people that you're working with, and how do you help them to begin to heal from it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have learned that shame, at its very basic level, it's an emotion. It's a feeling that we have, just like sadness, or sorrow or joy or fear. Shame is an emotion that gets attached to our stories or the thoughts that we have about circumstances in our life, whether that's our own selves, our upbringing, our background, our families, our choices, our education, all of those things. And so when we've attached this meaning that there's a certain place we need to be or should be or are supposed to be here, and there's this gap, then we fall into that comparison trap, and shame or not enoughness can sneak in. And the thing about shame is, the more that it's buried or ignored or hidden or denied, the more it grows, and the more it festers, the more it worsens. Shame just thrives in environments where it's not safe, where there's not emotional, mental, or spiritual safety. to talk about it. And so in order to begin to dissolve the shame, because I don't know if there's ever a point of true, releasing all of the shame. It's a process because we're human. But in order to begin to dissolve that shame, you have to start speaking your story, sharing your stories. And that's another way of saying sharing your experiences. And ideally in the presence of empathetic witnesses. Now, I realize not everybody has that, like in a friend or a family member, but some people will find that in a life coach or a therapist. And that can be one-on-one, or it can be in a group setting. Of course, confidentiality is crucial in order to ensure that safety and foster trust and have a healthy environment. I like to say that shame has no power in the face of authenticity. And part of that power lies in you get to choose to whom and where and how much, how often, etc., that you show that authentic self, that you show up or share who you are, what you're going through and struggling with to others. So, yeah, does that help answer the question?
I love it. Yes. I love the authenticity part. I think that's something that I talk a lot about on my account is, we can't abandon ourselves in our spirituality. And I think too often people do, or they put themselves lowest on the totem pole. And I totally believe in spiritual authenticity and, spiritual uniqueness. I love how unique everybody's spirituality is. Even if we're in the same church, our spirituality will be so different still. And that's what I love. So yeah, that's such an important message about shame too. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I like that you said not enoughness too. I was talking to I'm now in Young Women's, and I was talking to our young women about shame, and it was hard to define. And so I think that would be really a great, everybody has not enoughness at times, I think we all feel like, oh, I'm not enough for this specific thing or for this, or I did this, so I'm not enough. I really like kind of simplifying like that. That's really beautiful and helpful. Maybe beautiful isn't the word, but helpful, I think.
I think the crazy thing is who said we have to be enough, and what's the definition of enough anyway? Everybody's is going to be relative to their situation. And I think the important thing is finding value in you and defining you for you, not relative to something or someone else.
And
just finding or falling back on one of the things that we believe is that, the worth of souls is great in the sight of God. We're born with it. It's inherent. We don't have to do anything to achieve it or earn it or gain it. It's just there.
Yes, it just is. Yes. We recently interviewed a Pastor Reba, and she said something that stuck with me. She said, everyone has something to teach. And it's so true. Like you said, every single soul matters, and we can get that imposter syndrome. Like we all feel like we're not enough at times, but we all have something to contribute. We all have gifts to bring to the table.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you want to share about our origin story, Em?
Yeah. Well, so we usually start our origin story when we decided to do the podcast, but I feel like with your platform, maybe we'll go back a little bit further.
Yeah, I would love that.
So, and Ash, I'd like you to add to this because it would be great to hear your side of it. We don't talk about this as often. So when we were, how many years ago, my brother came out as gay, maybe, how long ago was that, Ash? He was he in high school still?
Yeah.
So he was
maybe
probably
just barely
15,
out of high school.
16.
I feel like I was 15-ish. So I think he was freshly out of high school probably. But yeah.
Okay. So about 17 years ago, our brother came out as gay. And back then it was not talked about like it is now at all. And it was very shameful, and it within the church, you know, and I think within society as well. Like it was just an unknown still. And it was something people were trying to figure out if you were born with, or if you chose it. And I remember having conversations with him about whether or not he chose it, and he didn't know either. You know, he was like, I don't know, maybe it was because I was teased when I was little, and people said, maybe you're gay, or you're gay, or you look gay, or you act gay, or whatever. And he said, maybe I just internalized that, and so maybe I am, and maybe that's why. And and it was such a blurry time of life for all of us, him included. And he is like the most considerate person in the world. So he doesn't want to bother anyone about anything. And so he really struggled with the fact that this could bother people, you know, and just trying to find himself. And I was probably back from my mission, or right before my mission, very much in mission mode, very much in church mode. And I just didn't know what to do with that. I loved him. And luckily we come from a family that is very loving, very, very loving first, you know, first and foremost, love. And so that was great. And we loved him so much. And, but we still struggled with, well, what does that mean? You know, and what does it mean for your salvation? What does it mean if you act upon it, in quotations? What does it mean if you know, give in to these feelings or whatever? And it was a really big struggle for me for probably 2 years, just to know how to kind of approach it, and how to be okay with it for myself, you know, and still loving him, and not just supporting him, or not loving the act. I really never liked that sentiment. But just loving all of him, you know, and still feeling like I was a good churchgoer, and like I was doing all of the things God asked me to do, and I wasn't deviating in any way. And so I think it took a couple years, and then I remember talking with someone, and they're like, Emilie, the answer is just love. That's it. Like there's nothing else. That's all there is. And that was huge for me. And so I was able to kind of move past all of that and just love him, and just know that he was the way he was supposed to be. And then a few years later, a couple years ago, my other brother left the church, and Ashlie, my sister, the nuanced Mormon, started an account before my brother left the church. And that kind of, you know, kicked up the dust a little bit for everyone. I think we were all like, wait, what do we believe? Like, where are we at in our faith journey and our spiritual journey? And so I think once my brother, sorry, I haven't talked about this for a long time either. Once my brother, that's just 13 months younger than me, we're very, very close. He left the church. It caused me to really reevaluate and go, wait, what are the parts that we love, and what are the parts we can be okay with letting go, you know? And so I kind of recently really have deconstructed, and that's really right in the middle of it. I asked Ashlie to do this podcast with me. And I think I started this because I needed something to heal, and I wanted to know about other things. You know, I wanted to know not just about the things I've always been taught and the things that are in my lane and in my bubble, but I wanted to know about others, about other people of different faiths, other spiritualities, other religions. And so we started looking into this, and luckily we have a really solid foundation of kind of wanting to know more about other churches, because our grandma Maxine was LDS and our grandpa John was Catholic, and they had a picture of the prophet and the Pope side by side hanging in their house.
I love
that. Which we love. Great. And grandma Maxine always said, there is good in all religions. And so that's where it started. Do you want to add anything, Ash?
I mean, you covered it so well. I will just say on my own journey, creating my account, the Nuanced Mormon, was out of I think almost desperation to connect with people, and also desperation to stay in my religion, because I had felt that pain, I just had so much empathy for what my brother was going through. And I'm very grateful that I felt very quickly when he came out, and my cousin at the time too, who's one of my best friends, came out to me as well. And I'm so grateful that the Spirit just confirmed in me personally. I had my own personal revelation that it was okay. And I remember having a conversation with my cousin where he said, "Do you think I'm going to hell?" Sorry, I'm going to get emotional. And I just said, "If you're going to hell, I'm going to hell, because like I'm going wherever you're going." And then I just said, "Absolutely not. Like, this is, this is who you are." And yet I still could see the pain that they went through within their church experience. But we are grateful. We're so grateful. I mean, to be from a loving family that is just very loving and accepting. But it's hard to see how the church was handling those topics. And my account originally, before it was Nuanced Mormon, it was LDS, for LGBTQ, because I just felt like the only way I can stay, and this is just me personally, of course, but I just thought, if I'm not speaking out about this, then I'm not going to feel comfortable staying. And so I created it, and meeting different people, like you mentioned, Meagan, it's so healing. It really healed me so deeply. And so when Emmy came to me with the podcast idea, I thought, oh, this will be what my account has been like. This will help heal you. And surprisingly, it's continued to heal me too.
One thing too, as you were talking, I thought of this. When Jake left the church, my brother, just younger than me, a lot of people said, "Are you worried about him?" And my immediate reaction is absolutely not. He is on his own faith journey, and I'm on my own faith journey, and we all just, I'm not worried about where we arrive either. I think that we all just are on our own faith journey, and that's okay. We're individual people,
You know what I love so much? Well, I love so many things about what you both just shared, but you made me think of something that I don't think I've ever said out loud in an interview. But similarly to what you both said, I've reframed like what I view as most important, and the emphasis of where I put, the things that I focus on, and that's love. And that I have also asked myself that question, what happens? I think I had to get to this point. Like, what if I'm wrong? And I just decided, okay, I guess I'll just take that chance, because my kid is worth it. The love that I have for him and for, all of my family. I just, something I hear from both of you, we've learned and continue to learn how to lean more into uncertainty, and really, I actually embrace it. There are times when I'm just like, you know what? We just really don't know. And I am okay with it. And I can just let that be. And I'm like you, Ash. Speaking out or amplifying these messages and voices it's like I feel like I have to, in order to stay aligned with my integrity, if I'm still going to stay connected in some way. Wow. Things that I've never said out loud, y'all. I just
hot take.
Thank you so much for saying that here, being vulnerable with us.
And I felt your desperation when you said that. That's a really good word. This is not something people take lightly, and I fear that it's viewed that way. And that's just not the case. It's just not. It's really personal. And it's like you, I think, said, Emilie, you didn't focus on, unfortunately, I think LGBTQ issues are often narrowed down to just sex, right? But you saw your brother way beyond that. You were able to see him, that it's not about this sexual act. It's about an overall person, and it's about a way of viewing life. It's about a way of experiencing life and connecting with others, and about the gifts and the talents and the blessings that they are able to offer to others. It's so much bigger than that. And I caught you saying that, and I just wanted to echo your sentiments.
Thank you.
So maybe I'll pose the next question. You've already kind of shared some of your processes that you went through when you started trying to reconcile these discrepancies, this excruciating process of trying to reconcile discrepancies. And one thing I've noticed that we don't do, or maybe we're not taught to do, is giving ourselves permission to do things. Like you gave yourselves permission to, unknowingly or not, maybe you recognize it, I don't know. Maybe it was the love for your brother and the love for the gospel, some of both. How do you remember, like, how did you start doing that? Giving yourself permission to have these questions and have these doubts. That has to come way before we ask them, right? If they come up and we're denying them or trying to ignore them or push them away, then they're not going to get very far.
Yeah.
I think for me, at first I didn't allow that. I kind of mentioned that, but I allowed the church to answer all my questions for me. And so I looked to the church and I thought, oh, okay, this is what this means. And this is why they're saying that. And this is why this is eternal. And this is why this, and this is that. And then eventually I think it took, all of my family kind of in the same space for me to be like, okay, what am I missing? What am I like? Maybe I'm kind of on a high horse right now because I'm finding answers in the answers that the church is giving me. And so I think I finally just had to be like, what is at my true core? What do I really feel? And what do I really personally, like me, not what I think God wants me to think or what God wants me to feel, but what do I actually feel,
Yes.
And I don't know how that happened. I think a lot of support. I think maybe because my family was all in a very similar space, I recognized, oh, I have unconditional, full 100% support in my sister and my brother and my sister-in-law and my mom and my dad and all of my siblings and my husband. And I think that's when I think sometimes people look at like a deconstruction as, oh, you're just following, like that you have people that are also struggling. And so you're just able to follow and it's the cool thing to do right now or whatever. But no, I think it's actually just that you're able to see that you have support to question, that you have the ability to step back from your life and be like, hold on, where am I at? Because they're going to catch me if I fall. So it's okay to let go,
Yeah.
I love that analogy. They're going to catch me if I fall. That's huge. And I think that what's wrong with wanting to explore what your family explores? I think in raising my own children now, I think I will always consider myself LDS or a Mormon. But I want my kids to know that there's a, Catholic church down the street or a Buddhist temple, or I would love for them to just go and explore and see that there's different things out there than just one thing. But yeah, to answer your question, I think when I started to feel a little bit off, like my conscience wasn't matching with some of the things that I heard at church. I think it wasn't easy. And there were times, like I talk about this on my account, but I haven't in a long time, but there were days where I would lay on the floor crying, and it's going to make me cry right now just thinking about it. But, I'm not an angry person at all. I'm very non-angry, but I remember driving to the temple downtown, and I was pounding my steering wheel, and I was just so angry at God. And yet I was like needing God more than ever, which reminds me of like my 5-year-old throwing a tantrum, just angry. They're so angry that they didn't get what they want or something. And yet all they really need is a hug. Like I obviously was needing comfort, and that came with my account, and it's come more with the podcast. And so we have these tattoos, Emmy and I, on our wrists that are Jean Valjean's prison number. And to me, it's like my CTR ring. And I've learned that the choose the right thing, it's a cute thing to say as a kid, but it's really difficult in practice because there's not always a clear cut right answer. And to me, the whole story of Les Mis is spirit of the law over letter of the law.
Yeah.
Like when I drop my kids off at school, I say, listen to your intuition, that moral compass in you that's going to tell you what's right for the situation, not necessarily what's right on paper, but what's right for the situation.
A theme that I kind of heard from both of you when you, Emilie, were talking about in the beginning, you were kind of looking to external sources for validation, like to the church, right? And then Ashlie, that experience where you're driving to the temple and just angry and pounding on the steering wheel. I mean, that's real raw emotion. And there's a reason for those things, right? I think you have to learn to separate yourself, to differentiate yourself from this. What's the best way to say it? Like, I don't know, group think, or just this idea of conformity, that and what your intuition was telling you was your truth, is what you needed to do. I truly believe if we don't listen to that, we make ourselves physically, emotionally, spiritually ill. Like, it's all connected, and it'll show up in one way or another. And I love that you're both mentioning how you have this safe family. It helped that you had others in your family that were getting curious and saying it out loud and talking about these things. And not everybody has that. And so I especially love that you are opening your arms, you're opening your space for others to be able to feel welcomed in. For many, I know podcasts can be a lifeline. And so it's not lost on me that you're opening up this space for others to feel that safety and that love that you have felt in your own families.
And I think it's important for people to remember that it's really vulnerable and scary, but it does help people. I think what you're doing is doing that so much as well. And last year, we went to a Restore gathering after Restore. We didn't make it to Restore, but we went to a gathering afterwards. And that was the first time I felt very, very, very validated in exactly what I was going through. I was teaching gospel doctrine in my ward, and I felt like I was talking to nobody. I felt like I was just saying all of these words, and nobody was really reciprocating or internalizing or agreeing or whatever with the things that I was saying. And really, I was just mostly talking about love. but I think in that group last year, I found some other people that were also doing the same thing. And they're like, oh, well, you'll find the people that will come up to you and tell you how grateful they are that you're opening the conversation. But I didn't. I wasn't. I wasn't finding that in my ward. But then little by little, I did. And I asked to be in Young Women's just recently. And after teaching there for 2 years, because my daughter's in there, and I just kind of want to be a part of what she's being taught. And so, and the Young Women's president was great. And she's like, I need you right now. I said, whenever you need me, I'm here. I'd love to be in there before she's out of there. And she's like, I need you now. So I'm in there now. And after I left, I got all these people that came up to me and they're like, oh, we miss your lessons. I'm so grateful for everything you said. I'm like, would have been good to know like 2 years ago. But my point is that they're out there. Like, it really is helpful, even though it is so vulnerable. And what we're doing and what you're doing, this is extremely vulnerable because we do share a piece of ourselves that is very personal and sacred and special, and difficult and hard and tragic, but it's really important that others know that there's a safe space that they can also share and be comforted and be supported.
And I don't know if you all have found this, but I find that vulnerability begets vulnerability. Like when you open up your heart and your soul and your story to others, it just naturally invites them to do the same. Now, whether or not they choose to, that's up to them, and that's fine. And it may not be right in that moment, but I have found that people then know you're a safe space and they'll share things with you. And that's sacred ground.
Yeah,
absolutely. Oh yeah. I mean, our podcast name is That's Church, and we feel it. we feel church within these spaces and conversations. How has your podcast, how has it changed your spirituality, or do you think it has changed your spirituality?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think everything's contributed to it. It's funny that you just said that this feels like church to you, because that is how mine has felt at times. Because I experienced similar things that you did, Emilie. Not everybody is in this place of feeling comfortable, or maybe they don't have the concerns that you do. They haven't had the experiences that you have had that bring up questions and the discomfort that comes with being told something or being taught something that's just absolutely doesn't align with your spirit. You just know your spirit rejects it. I mean, I'm going through that right now with the recent handbook changes.
Yeah.
My kiddo identifies as transgender. And honestly, a part of what makes me a little sad, like a lot don't even know about them. It's like only those who they affect, or if the situation comes up in your ward where a need to refer to the handbook presents itself. Going back to what you said, Ashlie, about love. Well, actually, you both did. You were talking about your gospel doctrine lesson on just love. I try to find the love in those policies. I don't find the love of Jesus Christ in those policies. What I find are perpetuation of stereotypes and mispresenting an individual. And it's an opportunity for those that aren't willing to step out of their comfort zone. They don't need to. They can just point, well, look, it says this right here. And so I'm doing it right, versus leaning inward and listening to what their intuition is telling them, seeking to connect with that and ask themselves, does that really align? Because our leaders are not perfect. Nobody is. And I'm not speaking ill against them. I'm just, there have been times when things have changed in the past because of error, sometimes grave error. And so, yeah.
Amen.
This,
they're human.
This podcast has been a way for me to process a lot of things that those in closer proximity aren't ready or in a place to talk about. And so it's been super healing for that reason. I interviewed a fellow mama she actually has a transgender child and a non-binary child. And we had a very open, candid, respectful discussion about that. And so healing, so good to be able to feel like you weren't alone, and the others could see that you're not, I don't like using this word, but I can't think of it. You're not crazy. I can't think of another way right now to describe that feeling. I don't anyway.
I think that's a great word because everyone can feel that.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I just briefly, I remember when the trumpet fire talk was given, and it sounds like it was a similar experience to what you're going through right now with the recent handbook change. And I just remember staring at the wall. I just was completely numb. And I remember thinking, because people were saying all these different things, and, they were like, Elder Holland's tears are fake. And I just remember thinking, no, he's really crying, but he's crying about the wrong things. He's perpetuating the problem. And we don't, our LGBTQ plus community doesn't need our tears. They need our love and support. And there's a huge push, and things are changing, and people are becoming more authentic, especially this next generation coming up is I think the most empathetic and loving generation overall that we've seen. And so there's this wave of acceptance coming. And I think with that much acceptance and love coming, there's quite a few people that are feeling a lot of fear. And I think that's what's manifesting right now. I've always felt like help is needed from the inside and the outside on these things. And, progress will march on in those senses. And I'm just so grateful that your child has you as their mom, because I'm going to cry again. But we see how big of a difference that makes. We saw how big of a difference that made for our brother having our parents versus some other stories that we've heard. And for a church that claims to be family oriented and families are forever, it's really sad to see families that are rejecting children over this. It's so the opposite of what we should be doing.
So our podcast is obviously all about interfaith and different faiths and different spiritual beliefs, different faith beliefs, just different perspectives and ideas. And so I wonder, within dynamics of like family members and communities and just different beliefs in anything, whether it be gender, sexuality, spirituality, how do you handle that in your space? Thank you for listening to That's Church. We'll pause here for now. We've covered so much in this first part of our conversation, and in part 2, we'll dive even deeper into our personal journeys of faith. I'll be sharing my own experience of discovering who God is to me and my conclusion about Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother. We'll also talk about how we've navigated faith transitions and embraced different perspectives along the way. To unlock part 2, make sure to subscribe and listen on Apple Podcasts or watch on Spotify. And don't forget, our Interfaith event is on November 2nd at the Compass Gallery. You can get your tickets at tinyurl.com/that'schurch. And be sure to use the code Meagan Skidmore Coaching for 50% off. Also, be sure to listen to all of Meagan's great conversations on her podcast, Beyond the Shadow of Doubt, wherever you find your podcasts. See you in part 2.